Hey, it's Huck. Yeah, I'll tell you, I have had a bad time here lately, and that's why I haven't posted a video in some time. Today is, I think, the 10th day in a row I have not been able to work. That means that this 2-week pay period I'll make nothing. Now, this is hard on the heels of the last 2-week pay period, where I worked a total of 2 out of 10 working days, and I got a 2-day pay. And after they took out for my health insurance, I made like $26. So needless to say, having practically no money coming in here for the last month, I'm a little behind in everything. You know, thank my lucky stars that someone out there has been helping me a little bit, and only because of that I have hopes that maybe by the end of the month I will be able to pay my phone bill, because that's for me a necessity to have my phone at all times. My car insurance, which I basically had to reduce to just liability this month, and I'm hoping at the end of the month I may have enough, hopefully, to pay the house payment. I'm several months behind in a couple of things like my gas bill. I've got to go down to the city building today and fill out some forms and you know, guesstimate when I can pay the bill so they don't shut my electricity and my water off in another week or so. And there's other things, obviously, that are going unpaid, but you know, you do what you do. I explain all of that because, you see, normally when I have this problem with my breathing, I can go 2 or 3 days off of work, you know, take my nebulizer treatments. Doctor prescribes me steroids. Yeah, prednisone, I think it's called, that he keeps putting me on, and I don't know, there's some type of steroid supposed to help the inflammation in your lungs heal a little bit. I know they don't do much for muscles, you know. Well, at any rate, usually after maybe 2 or 3 days off and some rest and staying from going out in the cold air, I'm recovered enough to at least, you know, get in 4 or 5 days of work. But for some reason I'm not recovering this time. And I know I got to go see a specialist, and they'll, I don't know, probably run more tests. I'm hoping I can come up with the $50 that I've got to pay the specialist before he'll even see me, which is why I broke my last appointment. But, you know, I guess your health has to come first. At any rate, this is why I have not posted a video on this channel for some time. In fact, on either of my channel, I have been really behind. And today I thought I would at least mention that, you know, an update to tell you why. And this is, you know, this has been the situation for me. I have had extreme problems of even talking for, you know, more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time, which is one of the reasons why I also can't work with this. It's hard enough for me to go outside in the cold weather or to walk the, you know, the blocks that I have to walk from where I park to get to the building. That's been a huge hurdle for me. But in addition to that, I'm on the phone all day. And I mean, I'm taking call after call after call. Some of my calls last 20 minutes or even 40 minutes, and then I'm on another call. And you do this with a couple of breaks throughout the day, but for the most part, you're on the phone all day. And I'll tell you this, if this video were to last 10 or 15 minutes, you'd see right away how I'll be straining to just talk. So I will promise to keep this short. All of this time off, though, has given me the luxury that I don't normally have, which is to kind of keep up with everything going on in the world. I have been, as always, you know, watching my Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes and Lawrence O'Donnell programming. I tape those every night religiously, even when I'm working, so that I try to get caught up with them. You know, usually by the end of the week I can watch them all. But now that I've been off, I've been able to enjoy all of those, you know, in the regular time slots, as well as keeping up with some of the other shows that I try to watch from time to time. But, of course, what's been occupying a lot of my time is looking at all of the things that have been going on in the world. And there, you know, so much of it has been troubling. And, of course, like always, I have my opinions, as I'm sure you do. And I enjoy sharing those opinions with you from time to time, which is the whole point of this channel. So I do promise to do my best to start talking about some of these topics as soon as I have time, as soon as I'm feeling better, and can go into them in some detail. And I thought today I would just, because there's so many things going on, it's hard to narrow down what to talk about. This whole craziness going on in Alabama right now. So many Republican governors around the country that are just wreaking havoc on their states. Illinois' governor comes to mind, Kansas's governor. Well, just so many of them. But I thought, you know, one of the things I could briefly touch on is I have been watching with just amazement at the flawed field of GOP candidates seemingly lining up for the opportunity to be defeated in November of 2016. The presidential race this year, I think, is you know, shaping up to be unlike maybe anything we've ever seen in the past. Of course, in this situation, it kind of reminds me a little bit of 2008 in that you know, there'll be no incumbent president, and so you know it basically kind of opens things wide up for competition here. And on the Republican side of the ledger here, we are seeing an interesting array of, well, really crazy people, flawed candidates rising to the top here. And there's really no way, I think, to predict how this is really going to come out. But as I look at the field of candidates, obviously you've got Jeb Bush. And I think there is still a very significant hangover from the previous Bush administration that's going to hover over his head like a cloud, and more things are going to come out. He's already shown that he's a little out of touch with, you know, how to run a political campaign. It seems like every major move that he's made so far, as you know, putting together his staff and the inner workings of, he's a good moderate speaker, comes off as, you know, a nice guy, if you will, but his decision making, from this guy he tried to hire as his tech consultant, to some of the other things that he's done, as far as one of the things that you can count on Bush doing, and I know Rachel Maddow, I think it was Rachel Maddow that mentioned this just last night, is that you know, he's using his brother's approach here in the very early stages of building a campaign, in trying to launch like shock and awe on all of his opponents by trying to amass, you know, a lot of campaign funding very early on, basically to intimidate all others. And George Bush did that quite successfully, obviously, back in his initial run in 2000, and again, actually 4 years later as well, when he was running for re-election.
Treat me like a fool, treat me mean cruel, but love me, break my faithful heart, tear it all apart, but love me, don't you love me?
But one of the things that Citizens United and all of the unlimited fundraising now that PACs can contribute. Last year, or I'm sorry, in 2012, there was one candidate in the race who was basically single-handedly funded by one billionaire, Adelson, the Las Vegas casino tycoon, was basically single-handedly keeping Newt Gingrich in the race, simply from his own individual efforts. Likewise, you have, you know, 5 or 6 candidates here, at least 4 that I can see, who clearly have their own funding sources that can probably keep them going, you know, throughout a campaign, unless they unless that money should at some point dry up because it becomes clear that they're not really viable. And those candidates would be Jeb Bush, obviously. And a lot of his money is going to come from corporate America, and maybe a lot of it from Wall Street. I think you've also got to consider Scott Walker, who I think is a real potential, candidate. A guy that I probably trust less than almost any other person in the field. Not quite, because it's a pretty crazy field, but certainly a guy that is pretty scary to contemplate him being in the office. He's got some flaws, though, that are going to come out yet, that are, somewhat less known outside of probably Wisconsin politics, but he is going to receive, in my opinion, some significant funding from the Koch brothers and the varied number of PACs and other political arms of the Koch brothers that they secretly fund. So there's no telling how much money he's going to gobble up. I think Ted Cruz has a certain handle on this old Tea Party movement, particularly in a lot of southern states. And I think there'll be a lot of money coming his way. Maybe not in the vast amounts of money we can expect to see, pumped into Bush's campaign or even Scott Walker's campaign, but I think enough that could keep Cruz in the picture for a while. And then, of course, you've got Rand Paul, who I think is very unsuccessfully at this point trying to walk a fine line between all of the followers of his father's many attempts at running for president, capped, of course, in 2012 when he put up a pretty good fight, particularly considering that he was using largely the caucus states as his means of securing delegates, and at any rate, trying to hold on to those libertarian voters while also trying to sell himself as more of a moderate, and also as with certain aspects of his views targeting the Tea Party folks out there. It's a very difficult line, which we've already seen he can't always walk. He's already seen this blow up in his face on any number of issues, most recently the vaccination issue, because he's trying to appeal to the libertarians, and yet you get the feeling that this guy is going to say or do anything that will appease those factions that he desperately needs to hold on to have any realistic chance of cracking into this field in a real way. I think all four are highly flawed, and then you've got some others. Chris Christie, I think, is going to be one of the ones that are going to probably be eliminated fairly early on. Chris Christie has a number of issues, not just all of the ones that are dogging him, all the scandals, back home in New Jersey, and there are many, not just the Bridgegate scandal, but I think his problems are just beginning. And he's also going to have very difficult arguments to make to try to secure some of the funding that I think is sure to go to other candidates. Particularly, he's not welcome in the Koch world. Wall Street has always been a pretty big. He's always been a benefactor of Wall Street money. Located in New Jersey, Wall Street is right on the border of his jurisdiction there, and certainly plays a key role in New Jersey politics, and always has. But a lot of that Wall Street money, I think, is going to be reluctant to come his way, particularly while there are other more viable candidates with, maybe lower and unfavorable ratings. I honestly don't think he's going to get the funding that he needs to stay in the race. And frankly, the only reason that Chris Christie ever had appeal was because he was a Republican governor in a highly Democratic state, New Jersey, who had successfully won 2 elections there as governor, and largely on top of that, it was the gravitas. It was, I think it comes down to, like so many Republicans these days, this bullying tactic that he uses over and over again. I think I've heard him say "shut up" to more reporters and more constituents than all other politicians I've ever heard use that term combined. At any rate, that's one thing when you're sitting on top and you're getting 70%, favorable ratings, as he did, after Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy devastated the Jersey Shore and much of the East Coast. But since all of these scandals have come out, and he's been dogged by some pretty legitimate fact-finding missions on discovering, maybe how he has abused his authority, withholding FEMA funding to certain communities for political reasons. Same thing that the Bridgegate scandal is alleged to have been, at the root of it all. But, I think right now, even Republican voters, even New Jersey voters, are probably not real keen on seeing this bully who allegedly has this history of using his, vast authority as governor to retaliate against those with an opposing view or those who won't climb on board. Somehow I have a feeling that it puts a real scare into folks wondering what he would do, in the Oval Office with, the power of, being able to use all the resources of the federal government to come after political opponents or individual citizens or other politicians. So I don't see Christie getting a lot of political support, from other, I just don't see other candidates, even as they drop off out of the field, putting their support behind someone like Christie. And I think his unfavorable numbers are indicative of that. There are many candidates that I can't go through them all right now, and so I want to give a much more detailed accounting of at least the current status of the GOP field in a coming video. And of course, we're going to keep updating that as the months go on. We're at a very early stage. There are some real bozos that are running in the Republican field, and apparently that just kind of goes with being Republican these days, that it's unavoidable. But one of the names I'm kind of surprised has not entered the field right now, and I think they're probably the one that I think would have the clearest chance of making inroads in a general election against whether it be Hillary Clinton or anybody else the Democrats would likely put up, would be a guy that's not really announced his candidacy, and in fact may have announced that he has no interest in it, and that is Ohio's Governor John Kasich. Now, I am no fan of Republican Governor Kasich. Just on some of the bills that the Ohio legislature has passed and he has signed, including one that tried to strip away unions. Now on this one he did a big mea culpa. Ohioans had a petition drive where they came up with, I don't know what it was, almost 2 million signatures to a petition drive to repeal these anti-union laws that he had signed into law, and they were stricken after overwhelming vote. These petitions managed to put this a repeal of that law on the ballot, and to our credit, Ohioans went out and voted, and by something like close to 30 points repealed those anti-union laws. And now Walker has this, a similar dilemma. Probably his biggest claim to fame is his anti-union stance in Wisconsin, where the legislature, with his blessing and signature, were able to put these anti-union laws on the books. And unlike Ohio, they did not have a mechanism to put that law on the ballot, as far as an attempt to by popular vote try to repeal that law. They didn't have that. They don't have that mechanism. They have to actually do that in the legislature if it's going to be done at all. But the truth is, union sentiment is not that strong in America today, and that's a subject for another video. But Kasich would be a scary candidate in more ways than one. His politics are not much different from many of the others in the field. And his ties to Wall Street, his anti-union stance, his I would suggest that if he were able to get into this field and get some funding, his ability to communicate and to come across as sincere, particularly on social issues, where he tends to sound much less strident than your typical GOP candidate. I think it would play well in the general election. I'm not at all sure how it would play in the GOP primaries, but he's just the type of candidate, I do think, that would play well in November in a general election. But at any rate, he's the one candidate that would really scare me. Of all of the names that I've seen tossed about, he's the one that I think could probably do the most damage.
I'll be waiting there with my arms unfurled, waiting just for you. Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world.
Which brings me to Hillary Clinton. I am not completely enamored with Hillary Clinton as our Democratic nominee, and it looks like right now few, if any, Democrats are willing to throw their hat in the ring to really challenge her at this point. Now, I know it's early. We all know that Vice President Joe Biden is probably chomping at the bit and may well challenge her in the end. Elizabeth Warren, I think, is wisely using her platform as a senator with a lot of very progressive support calling for her to enter the race. I think she's wisely using that as leverage to try to push the Democratic agenda, to a more progressive path than where I think Hillary would originally take it. But as far as Hillary Clinton is concerned, there are some things that, I agree with her with 100%. I think on most social issues, and in a number of areas, she's okay. And and pretty strong, in fact. Her personality is pretty strong. But there are also flaws that frankly scare me. Now, when compared to any of the GOP candidates in the field, well, it's kind of hands down, you know, Hillary. But the truth is, I don't believe that she's by any means the ideal Democratic candidate, and it's a little alarming to me at this point that we're not tossing about some other names. It's rather pathetic that so many Democrats seem to be willing to just hand her the nomination. I think she needs to be challenged. I think Hillary needs to be pushed a little bit more on some issues to a more progressive position, particularly in some areas of foreign policy. She's way too hawkish, you know, for my taste. And also on the whole, which I think is one of the most important areas we need to deal with here, is the income inequality. You know, her ties to Wall Street and her husband Bill's ties to Wall Street are legendary. And as long as that continues to be the case, I think, you know, we're not going to make the kind of progress and reform that's really in desperate need today. There's some other areas where I would have to have some disagreement with Hillary Clinton. But again, that's going to be fodder for another video as well as we get further into the political season. So I'm going to leave you with that today. I hope, if I'm feeling up to it, that I will be able to do something entertaining on my other channel this weekend. And so I hope you'll look for that. I hope I'm feeling well enough to do it. I can't imagine that I will be gone this long again. So I hope you'll keep looking back on this channel. Of course, my goal has always been to do at least a weekly video. And I know I'm going to be off work for another few more days at least. So in the coming days, I may try to work on one or two and post them, you know, when I can. So I hope you'll look for that. I thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Please feel free to like my video, you know, if for no other reason than, hey, good to see you, Huck. And, you know, comment below, because I'll tell you, I enjoy reading your comments. I don't always respond like I used to, but I do read them all. And they bring joy to my heart to know that you've watched. So I thank you again, and we'll see you again real soon.